And now, marine weather around Alaska. It's now time to look at your Alaska marine weather. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Monday, November 13th, and our outlook will include what the marine weather conditions will be like here for Tuesday into Wednesday. First, the sea ice continues to develop across the Arctic coast, and we have areas of ice within Kotzebue Sound as well as Norton Sound down along the Yukon Delta, and also some early signs of some ice forming in through parts of Bristol Bay and Kuskokwim Bays. But ice development is rather still early and light here across the southwest. We're going to have a milder windy front come back up into this region here Wednesday into Thursday, so that will likely inhibit any further ice development. Looking at the surface map, well, here's the low that brought another dump of snow across the Anchorage area. It produced anywhere from 8 to 12 inches of snow late Sunday night through this Monday morning. That system will continue working its way east-southeastward into the Panhandle and continue to weaken, but bringing coastal rain and a mix of some rain and snow across areas of the inner channels. Secondary cold front working its way into the northwest coast through the Bering Strait. And then here's the next primary weather maker, low pressure, located out just to the west end of the Aleutians. And this low will continue working its way east-northeastward, taking aim, will likely come on shore sometime later Wednesday up around Kuskokwim Bay, but it will have gale and even storm force winds associated with this system. And as another pretty healthy push of moisture comes up into the interior, there are winter storm watches for areas of the southwest, western, and central interior as we go into Wednesday night and on Thursday. So here's the situation. By Wednesday afternoon, we have that low pushing in just south of Nunavik Island, coming right up toward Kuskokwim Bay. And then that'll come further inland, spreading moisture in the form of snow here across the western and central interior. Areas along the southwest coast will be predominantly rain as this thing works its way inland Wednesday and Wednesday night. Secondary low trying to take shape again just south of the Kenai Peninsula, and it's looking like at least the precipitation with this next system will not be as heavy as it has been with the past two here across areas of south central, but there are definitely going to be winds and waves to contend with. Here in the southeast Tuesday, look for southwest winds to 20 knots there, Ketchikan, Metlakatla. Waves 5-7 feet within Dixon Entrance. 3 feet up here through Stevens Passage, southeast winds 15 knots, but northerly winds at 15 knots, 3-foot waves, Lynn Canal. The outer coast, low center is up in this vicinity, so strongest winds will be south of Sitka, 25 knots with gust out of the west of 40 knots, waves 18 feet. Further north, near and back on the backside of the low center, Yakutat Bay out toward Cape Suckling. North to northwest winds 10 to 15 knots, waves 10 to 12 feet. Wednesday winds will be southeasterly 15 to 20 knots across the inner channels, with waves generally 3 to maybe as high as 5 feet there in the vicinity of Ketchikan and out toward Dixon Entrance. For areas along the coast, south and then southeast winds 20 to 25 knots, turning to easterly gales to 35 knots there at Cape Suckling, and waves 10 to 11 feet. The northwestern Gulf, winds across Prince William Sound in the northern areas of Cook Inlet, north winds 15 to 20 knots, waves 3 to 4 feet. Through middle lower Cook Inlet at the entrance, west winds to 20 knots, as well as off the Kenai coast with waves running 4 to 6 feet. And then for Wednesday, we see those stronger winds just east of Cape Suckling. So we out there toward Kayak Island, there could be 40, 45 knot east to southeast gales, waves 10 to 12 feet, 35 knot easterly gales within Prince William Sound, 7-foot waves. Northeast to north winds 15 to 20 knots, upper middle Cook Inlet, but then at the entrance of Cook Inlet, look for southeast to east winds to 35 knots and waves 8 to 10 feet. Tuesday's winds around Kodiak Island, southeast or southwesterly 15 knots, waves 4 feet. Then as we go out along the Alaska Peninsula with that next frontal system working its way up along the peninsula, we're looking for ahead of it east to southeast winds 20 to as high as 30 knots once we get down toward Cold Bay Falls Pass, with waves there 8 to 10 feet. And then here come the bigger winds for Wednesday as that Low passes just south of Nunavik Island. And the front lifts further north up and along Bristol Bay and the upper portion of the peninsula. Southwest winds 25 to 35 knots around Kodiak Island, 35 to even 45 knot gales, strongest down toward Cold Bay and False Pass, southwesterly winds. And we're looking at waves building upwards around 20 feet once you get either side of the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. And looking at the eastern Aleutians on Tuesday, gale force winds 35 to 40 knots from the southwest. They increase to 45 knots west of Adak and as high as 50 knots from the southwest near and west of Kiska, with waves building in excess of 20 to 30 feet there west of Kiska on Tuesday. And the low will continue on Wednesday, tracking across the central Bering on up toward Nunavik Island and Kuskokwim Bay. And in the wake of that low, the strongest winds will be through the eastern half of the Aleutians. We're looking at southwest to westerly gales of 45 and storm force winds of 50 to 55 knots, and waves either side, the Bering or the North Pacific, waves will be running on the order of 20 to near 30 feet in some cases before turning more northwesterly west of Adak. Along the southwest coast, south winds into Bristol Bay at 25 knots, southeast winds 30 knots, Kuskokwim Bay, and then those winds turn more east, northeast 35 knots to 30 knots down there from St. Matthew to St. Paul. Generally easterly winds off the lower Yukon Delta to 20 knots, west winds still into the east end of Norton Sound, waves 4 to 5 feet there. And then for Wednesday, as the low center tracks in this fashion, we're going to have south-southwest winds to 30 to 35 knot gales out there towards St. Paul, waves 8 to 10 feet, Bristol Bay up toward Kuskokwim Bay, and then the north winds on the backside of the low, 35 knot gales there within the open waters of Norton Sound, down along the outer portion of the Yukon Delta, waves running at least 7 feet. And then for areas south of the Bering Strait on Tuesday, winds out of the north-northeast, 15 to 20 knots, waves anywhere from 5 to as high as 8 feet there just offshore of Gamble. Winds westerly within the lower Chukchi Sea, 25 knots. Strongest winds will be westerly to 30 knots just west there of Wainwright. And then southwest winds 15 to 20 knots along the central eastern Arctic coast with ice in place. For Wednesday, ice remains in that region, winds generally having some sort of southerly component at 10 to 15 knots. As we drop down, though, through the lower Chukchi Sea, look for northerly winds of 25 knots, accelerating to 35 to 40 knot gales through the Bering Strait and onto the north side of St. Lawrence Island, with waves running anywhere from around 10 feet there through the Bering Strait to as high as 10 to 15 feet on the north side of St. Lawrence.